Good morning, H105. I've been talking about how this class is going to be very writing heavy, and today, I'm not assigning a writing assignment today, but I am going to kind of go over the general characteristics and format of historical writing, or how to write a history paper. History, while it shares a lot of similarities with English and the humanities in the sense that both of them feature a lot of reading, a lot of writing, and a lot of interpretation and analysis of what these texts say, writing for history is, at the end of the day, pretty different than writing for any other discipline. Historical writing is a lot more analytical than that, where you're taking information and you have to interpret what this information means or what it says. So, to kind of go over basic historical formatting, this is an example of writing that I did. So over the summer, as a part of the IU ACP program, just as a way to make sure that their ACP instructors know what IU expects when it comes to these major writing assignments for you guys, we had to do a few of them over the summer. So this is one of the major essays I had to write over the summer. I'm taking a prompt from second semester, so that way I won't unduly influence you over the first semester. And by the time of second semester, I'm hoping you forget the specifics of this essay. So this is a prompt over basically what's referred to as the post-war golden age of America, the period following World War II and going up through roughly the mid to late 1960s, that's referred to as the golden age of American capitalism. And basically the prompt is asking how much of this was a golden age. This is an example type of prompt that you guys could very well see. I'm making up my own prompts. I'm not planning on making this one that you're going to write about, but that's roughly the kind of prompt that you would write about. As you can see, again, it's also the type of historical question that our unit questions are focused around. So if you want an idea of the types of prompts that your big analytical papers are going to be about, they're those historical questions that our units are structured around. That's an idea of that. So to start with this essay, I tend to be pretty brief with it because, like you, there's a page cap. You don't want to go over your page limit. And surprisingly, that can actually be harder when you have hard and fast page limits, things that you're not allowed to go over. I had to write a paper for the class I took over the summer where it was really, 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 really hard to not go over 25 pages. So making sure you understand how long you have to tell your story, essentially, to make your case is important to start with. So this first paragraph here, I have my introduction where I'm basically introing the time period, what the main subject of the essay is going to be about, basically about this golden age of peace and wealth and prosperity after World War II, yada, yada, yada. The important part, the part I really want to draw your attention to, is this last sentence here. This is my thesis. Like in English, history writing is structured around thesis statements. You're trying to prove your thesis. In this case, my thesis is an answer to that historical question asking about how much of a golden age was this post-war period. In my thesis, I state, referring to the post-war Referring to the post-World War II United States as a golden age fails to accurately characterize the period as a whole, since the economic benefits remained limited to middle-class white Americans, while the age encouraged social restrictions. So, what I'm doing in my thesis statement, it's clear in that I'm providing a clear answer to the question when asked how much of a golden age was this post-war period. My thesis statement clearly conveys that it really wasn't that much of a golden age. What I'm saying as a golden age fails to accurately characterize the period. So that's what your thesis statement needs to do. It needs to provide a clear answer to the question. You need to give a clear description of your interpretation, of the way you're analyzing this history. What I also do in my thesis is I touch on the main reasons why I think this. Your thesis statements also should at least briefly address why you reached the conclusion you did. So here I give the general points of, well, why was this not a golden age? Well, it wasn't a golden age because while there was a lot of wealth being generated, the wealth was not fairly distributed. It was only the middle-class white people that were really getting the benefits of this new productivity and all this wealth. And furthermore, socially, the period actually regressed and placed more restrictions on individuals and restricted individual liberties and freedoms. Those are my points. So I don't go into a whole lot of depth with those points here because this is my thesis statement, but I'm touching on them here to give my reader an idea of where I'm going in the rest of this essay and why I reached the conclusion to this, or the answer to the question that I did. So your thesis statements need to provide these clear answers to the question and should also attempt to signal why you reached the conclusion that you did. If I had just said the post-World War II United States was not a golden age, that's a thesis statement that is, while it's clear, it's too simplistic. We need to include I need to include the rest of it to properly develop it, to properly explain why I think this. So this is what it means to have both a clear and a developed thesis statement. This is one of the most important parts of having a good history paper. If your thesis is either overly simplistic or it's not clear enough, you're going to have a hard time writing a good essay, and your reader is going to have a hard time understanding what point you're trying to make. Another thing I want to draw your attention to, and I want to just mention here, these are different types of essays than you're used to writing, especially when it comes to history. When it comes to historical writing, up till this point, you've basically been used to summarizing information. If you basically write a summary where you give me a bunch of accurate facts and information about the period, that's not what I want. That's not what this paper is about, and you're not really going to get a good score on it. You need to engage in some analysis. Don't tell me what the sources say. Don't tell me what the reading says. Tell me what the sources mean. Why are these things important? What do these sources tell us about this time period? That's the mindset you need to approach these essays from. If you approach it from this source says this, and this source says this, and this source says this, you're not going to do well because that's not engaging in analysis and you're not really forming an interpretation. You're just summarizing. Okay. So going on, I have body paragraphs here, which follow a fairly standard format. I will get to more important ones later on. I want to draw your attention to this bad boy right here. And this is part that is going to be a bit different from between history and English, and that is the way we cite. Historians use Chicago formatting for their citations and their work citing. So, as such, when you write, you will also be using Chicago formatting, which means you're going to be using footnotes. And actually, I like footnotes. I like Chicago style a lot more than any other style. And to show you why, when you put a footnote in, basically you'll have the number after the sentence you're citing, or the sentence where you need to put the citation, and then at the bottom of the page, this is where your citation will go. Word has this really cool thing. Actually, I'm going to just give you a quick example of how to do this right now. Word has this really cool thing where it makes including footnotes really easy. So I'm just going to add a fake citation here to give you an idea of what they would be. So make sure you're after the period. You will go to insert, not insert. Oh. Is it with me? No. Layout. No. Did I? Well, this is wonderful. References. There we go. I apologize for that. You're going to go to references. It's been a little while since I've had to do this. So you'll go to references. You'll go up here to insert footnote, and then you will write your citation. I will be posting a citation guide on Canvas, so I'm going to do, let's see, Social Security Act. 1940, blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. You know, you get the gist. That's going to drive me crazy. So, the plus side of footnotes is that you don't have to worry about having a giant works cited page at the end. You can keep track of them here. There are specific things that will, again, be covered in that citation format that I send out. But your citations are just at the bottom. You'll cite them directly after each source, and that's it. And then when you repeatedly cite sources, the citations actually get a bit shorter later on. It's pretty nice, but you will need to be using Chicago style for these. Again, I think it's actually a bit easier than either MLA or APA. Anyway, off of that sidebar or diatribe. So if we, no, don't want to do that. If we continue up here, just as an example of how I structure my paragraphs, so you're still going to be having topic sentences where you give your reader an idea of where you're going in that paragraph. What's the main point you're going to try to make here? And then you'll include evidence in the case of these analytical papers. It will be specific examples from these specific sources, properly cited, and then explained to reinforce this point. So here, main point, it cannot be denied that the United States experienced incredible economic growth and expansion after World War II. That, when combined with the massive military buildup that coincided with the beginning of the Cold War, cemented the country's status as a superpower. Then later on, I start talking about the reasons why the U.S. has this economic growth because of the manufacturing buildup during the war and how that was left undamaged by the war. Yada, yada, yada. And when I finish with the source that I'm citing, I cite there. Basically, everything in this paragraph up until this footnote was from that source, hence why I can just cite at the end of that. Because it would just be redundant if I kept citing the same source over and over again in the same paragraph when everything in that paragraph or everything in that section is from the same source. So what I'm doing here is when I'm saying I'm citing this source, since we have all read the source and since you're citing the source, and since space may or may not be a problem, you don't necessarily need to include specific word-for-word quotes from your sources because that's going to take up space. So when you do include these quotes, you're going to want to be more sparing with them and pick the ones that you think are really, really effective. Here, I'm basically just summarizing the information in the source, and then I just cite it at the end because I still got that information from the source. So even if you're not quoting word for word from a source, you still have to cite it because you're taking the information and you're basing an interpretation off of the source. Basically, if what you're using for evidence, you have to cite it. If that makes sense. So in general, when it comes to your supporting details, you want a topic sentence that gives a general idea of what this paragraph is going to be about, what the main point of this paragraph is. You need to include evidence from the sources to back up what you're saying, to reinforce your point or to prove your point. And you're also going to need to explain how these sources prove your point. So this is a general overview as well. It is kind of all over the place. That's normally how these go. Really, the best way to learn how to write in history is you just have to do it and take the feedback you get and alter your writing accordingly. It's not easy to get in this mindset. It takes time. It takes practice. We will do that. And again, this is just meant as a general overview of stuff. When it comes time to write more, we will work more directly with specific stuff. You can also contact me directly to proofread or comment on your writings. But I wanted to at least give a general idea and a general overview of the framework when it comes to writing in history. The importance of clear and developed thesis statements and the importance of incorporating evidence and explaining how that evidence supports your thesis. That is really important when it comes to writing in history. So with that being said, have a good day, guys. I will talk to you later.